Worm is a web serial by J.C. McCrae, also known as Wildbow. You can read Worm in its original format by visiting parahumans.wordpress.com or donate to Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This story isn't intended for young or sensitive readers. Readers who are on the lookout for trigger warnings are advised to give Worm a pass. For a complete list, check the description for all of Worm's trigger warnings.
Take that, you worms. We're back.
We are.
Dissecting Worm. As always, welcome back, Alan and Michael, along myself.
Oh, why, thank you.
Jacob. I introduced myself, and we're just going to roll with it. Every time.
Mm-hmm.
Alan, we're in Arc 22, my friend.
Holy cow.
We've been building up to it. The last couple arcs have been a bit slower. A little bit of prep work, laying the kind of foundation for the season, kind of the direction we think we're taking. And we've been saying that stuff's going to start to ramp up. And I think we've ramped up at this point.
Yeah.
We've hit the ramp at full speed. Just evil Knieveling it right over.
Yeah, there are
13 buses.
Buses of just absolute buses of stories underneath us for passing by.
So here's my one dilemma that I'm going to present to you. 22 big arc, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
A lot that's happening. I don't want to change anything.
Okay. So I actually for once, despite having very few notes, have two big points for this.
Good. I'm glad you have something.
I'm glad. Yeah. So the big thing, we're talking about ramping up. Here is my issue for this season. This season, we have had what I would consider mostly keep it as is arcs. Like, very few notes for these.
Mm-hmm.
They stay as is. However, as an overarching season, I think we're going to have to do some major adjustments to the pace. Because this is one of those where every episode is perfect, but as a season, I don't think this works.
I'm here for it. Keep going.
What do you mean?
So hear me out. We've got the others where like there are some arcs that need some major rewriting. They need to be moved around in the season. They need to be, chapters that need to, or scenes that need to be pushed around, or things interspersed. But as a whole, the Slaughterhouse 9 has a seasonal arc. We're starting off, Slaughterhouse 9 shows up, we fight them, we're done. The first thing, we were becoming a hero, we end up fighting Leviathan, we're done. Season 3 was tougher because we're having to deal with the whole Coil getting, defeated essentially in the middle of it. And then Echidna for the back half with a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
But I mean, I think we kind of came to rest that, like, as long as we move a few things around, like Dinah maybe getting freed at the end, so it feels better, like that wraps up both the Echidna and the Coil conclusion, but at the end of the season for a nice feel-good moment that we feel some sort of victory on as we end the season. I think that is I think that all works.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're going to get into something that's very similar to the problems of season 3, where we're going to have a mid-season turnaround. But I think the problems are going to start compounding in terms of like, this isn't just we're dealing with Coil and the Echidna problem suddenly erupts. This is we're dealing with Taylor as a villain, and we're about to start dealing with Taylor as a hero very quickly. So
that's a good point.
That is a more transformational. That's more of a jump. Like, I know that the time skip doesn't happen till not even just now. It happens like, I want to say in like 2 or 3. Yeah, I'm gonna say like 3 arcs from now, maybe 4 even. But that's like she is. This is the last villain arc, really. And we're about to have a very drastic change in what's going on. So it is important that this be a lead up to an event, and then the event's happening, and then there being something happens at the end of this. What is the arc to this season? Because I wouldn't change most of these episodes. I like most of these episodes, these arcs, as a single episode. They're good. But where is it going? What is the conflict? What is the resolution? Because I feel like we just had it in this. This is the mid-season conflict, but what's going to be the end of season conflict? Because it's not going to be. It's not going to be bigger than this, really.
Yeah, this is. I mean, this is arguably like. I know we kind of get into the arcs that follow. The Slaughterhouse 9000 comes up, things like that.
What's the big here? Is it Behemoth?
Yeah, I was gonna say the Behemoth fight. That doesn't feel like it's different in season 1 when you build towards Leviathan, because the whole season is setting the framework for the world, and then it caps off with the climax of the biggest threat like that the world is facing. It's a build to that point, but you don't have that build here, especially because we've also seen the Simurf at this point. So like the arrival of Behemoth and the Behemoth fight is not going to have the same sort of climactic weight as the others in my mind. So like I agree. I don't think that's enough to sort of tie a season around or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could lead that direction. I think there are comments made that Taylor, specifically her reason for flipping over, and I mean, Tag talks about this, I believe, is that like, we're not going to survive the next Endbringer attack unless pieces are in place to deal with that. The PRT needs to be strong. Heroes and morale needs to be strong. Otherwise, we're not going to survive the next attack. And I think between that and sort of the long-term threat of the Slaughterhouse 9, I think you prepare the episode before this heavily with the world's coming to an end soon, but it might not even make it that long because the Endbringers might do us in first.
Right.
And just if you set that stage early, we build up the fact that when she does convert to the heroes, she is basically her goal is to be on a team, but whenever the Slaughterhouse 9 show up, she is going to get picked up from school by Dragon and Defiant, and the 3 of them are going to go murder some Slaughterhouse 9 members. Like, like she is, I hero, but literally heroing is her, not even her day job. That is, that's a sideshow for the like world saving heroing, which is what she's really signed up to do.
Right.
It's taking over for Alexandria. Alexandria, I can't imagine nowadays stops petty crime.
Yeah.
But
Right,
Alexandria
yeah.
shows up for Endbringer fights.
Right, exactly.
Like, Alexandria maybe fights somebody like Nilbog. It's only S-class threats. And I think Taylor is sitting in the dugout, hanging around, hitting some fly balls with the junior leagues, but is really only there to get pulled up to the major leagues when needed. Like, that's her real purpose. And I think if we focus on that as the direction, I think having the behemoth fight at the end will feel more fulfilling. If we put in danger that, like, I am here to make sure we make this next fight because we don't know how many people are going to make it. We don't know if we're going to make it even to the end of the world when the Slaughterhouse 9 show up. I think having that direction, it won't be as satisfying, but until we come up with something else, I think just having Behemoth as our end fight, we point the episodes towards that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that can work. I think one of the other issues with this season that, as we're kind of talking through everything, is in season 2, we set up the kind of overarching the threat for the whole show, which is this end of the world prophecy, right?
Yeah.
We set it up. Jack, we know, is going to play a part, and he's introduced that season. Like, everything makes sense. Theo's introduced that season. Like, all the important players are being set up in season 2, and then season 3 is fine. It's a bit of like a step back, kind of. We've done the setup. Now we're going to go back and sort of build up our characters a bit more, get people ready for what's to come, and then here we are in season 4, and it feels like more of that. So where by the time we get past Behemoth, now we're 2 seasons, theoretically, best case scenario 2 years, realistic scenario 4 to 5 years, past when all of that was introduced. And now we're getting back into our sort of big threat for the world. So my other fear is, like, do we need to be addressing the Slaughterhouse 9 more frequently this season? Do we need to stretch out to the Slaughterhouse 9000, maybe sort of adjusting that a bit in terms of how quickly it's introduced and resolved, maybe spreading it out a little bit more, sort of a B plot for the season? Spitballing here, but just something else to keep the audience engaged in the threat of the whole conflict of the story. I think of Game of Thrones, early Game of Thrones, I think did this very well. Honestly, they did it well until like the final, season and a half, as is the case. But Game of Thrones has this ticking clock of the White Walkers. It's literally the first scene in the show is the prelude with the White Walkers. It's alluded to constantly. It's always referenced in every season finale, right?
Yep.
See, every season finale, they go back to it, like, winter is coming. Here they come. Don't forget. And I do feel like Worm has that element. It has that ticking clock, that thing that is unstoppable, that the threat that is being ignored and not addressed by everyone except, like, our protagonist, right? Or our Jon Snow in this case. And I fear that if we diverge from that, again, it doesn't have to be, it's not every episode, but if we forget that for a season and a half or 2 seasons, you're going to lose and lessen the impact when we get there by the final season. And the last thing we want is a Game of Thrones season 7, am I right? Or season 8. Gosh, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Because I do like that. I like having, she gets onboarded. What does she do? They hunt down Slaughterhouse 9, and that is what the we'll just call them the D team for Dragon Defiant. The D team is doing is they're going out and they are they're hunting them down, and they bring Taylor along with them, and so 3 of them.
Mhm.
I'm still on board for making the Suicide Squad.
Okay, so here's the thing. I don't want to go this route because it diverges a bit too much from what we're trying to do with the podcast, which is take the existing story as written and adapt it for television, which is where we have our fun. But realistically, I think after she kills Alexandria, I think the story would pace so much better if, like, as quote punishment for her crimes / to save face, she is just shipped off instead of going with the wards, the Chicago wards, and this whole, which I do really love these arcs that are to come, some of my favorite arcs in the whole series. But for pacing wise, you would just remove all of that and replace her with Dragon and Defiant hunting down the Slaughterhouse 9, fighting the Slaughterhouse 9000, doing their best to do what they can to save the world, all in vain. Behemoth hits. Like, it's just this futile effort, but they're trying whatever they can. I think that would just work way better than this whole side quest she goes on with the wards.
Okay. So hear me out. For the last season, we essentially open with maybe 1 episode or 2 episodes where we kill Jack, but we start Gold Morning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got an episode or 2 dealing with Cauldron and that whole debacle, you know, teaming up, you know, fighting Scion, and then like 1 or 2, like literally an episode or 2. You do an episode for the end fight and then a epilogue episode for everything that happens afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could make, you know, just doing a quick calculation, that's 7 episodes, 8 episodes right there.
Mm-hmm.
You cut out Slaughterhouse 9000 there. You
Mm-hmm.
cut out her hanging out with the wards out from there too, and you stick the events all into this season.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really, really enjoy her training with Theo. I
do too.
Theo's thought process behind why his view of Taylor. And I think coming fresh off the fact that, like, essentially Dinah has said to him, you're going to be the one to kill Jack. Like, you can be the one, like, if anybody's going to do it, it's actually going to be you.
Right.
And so there is an immense amount of pressure kind of from everybody. I mean, we already had this from, you know, the Nazis he was hanging out with before, which is why they dumped him on the heroes. It's like, they'll equip you better to stop the end of the world. So, like, he's doing that. And then, you know, he's running around with Dragon and Defiant now, and Taylor, and he is taking, you know, all his combat advice, all his, like, he is essentially apprenticing under Taylor. And, you know, he is, we think about that phrase of, like, you I would kill, but also I can't kill you. Like, I feel I had knife to your neck. I couldn't do it right now, but I want to be able to do it. And Taylor 100% is the person to do that. And that's, like, first question. They're hanging out and he's like, how'd you do it? How'd you kill Alexandria? You know, he's asking all these questions and Taylor's, like, giving him honest answers. You know, something that kind of everybody has bullshitted around him. You know, because he's hanging out with heroes now. Like, he hung out with villains that sucked. And, you know, why do they do things? Because they're pieces of shit. And now he's hanging out with heroes. They're kind of sugarcoating everything for him. But then Taylor shows up and he's like, how do we do this? And she's like, you use every dirty trick in the book. This guy's going to end the world. We were going to end this motherfucker, like, as heroes, but we will do everything in our superpowers to end him before that happens. And I think that personality, like it already attracts him in every sense of the word. Like, like, yeah, I love some of the lines, he says talking about her and why he's attracted to her and how he also hates her because of it. Like all of that is so good. And I think we really play it up from Theo's perspective. You start the next season. I know we're talking about the next season already. We start the next season with, Taylor coming out or even the start of the second, we start the second half of this one. Taylor turns herself in. Taylor gets locked up. And we start the second half of the season from Theo's perspective. Yeah, and then you play out all the things where they're running around. You play a lot of the events of the Slaughterhouse 9000, a lot of the events that she has with the wards, but less so the PR stuff. Maybe some of the get to know you with maybe a PRT team that she's like essentially housed with in the interim. I don't know. Like, hey, you're gonna hang out here and learn the PRT codes until we come back to pick you up.
The training
yeah, the training
videos.
montage. Yeah, she's got to do all of her HR stuff,
the
filling out paperwork
music in the background.
Exactly. And that's where she like Theo, we're also coming back to get Theo. And so the two of them, while she, does a little bit of bonding with everybody else, that's like maybe half an episode. And then her and Theo are on the plane doing combat and whatnot, just getting ready for the next time they drop down and need to take on the 9.
Yeah.
I have ideas.
Yeah, that could work. I was going to say, I'm trying to.
Yeah, I was kind of. I like the idea that you were talking about. Scrape all that. I think I hadn't thought that as a viable option, Jacob, until you said something.
Yeah, and truthfully, I'm not sure I want to pursue that just because I do like the idea of taking each arc and talking about how they would adapt well. But I think it's probably just worth mentioning. That's kind of one of those things that if you were to hand Worm to an actual Hollywood writers' room, it feels like that's the kind of direction they would go. One, just to save on having to introduce new characters in season 4. The Chicago Wards, you've already got so many characters as is. And to try to keep everything in line with what's going on, it feels like where the big rewrite would take place would be over these arcs. So yeah, kind of it's fun to sort of speculate about.
Yeah.
Let's you want to jump back to arc 22?
Yeah, let's talk about 22. So here's my big idea for this.
Yeah.
We have had a whole episode essentially from Taylor's perspective, which I think we should stick with. It is one episode. It is all her going scene to scene, not much changing there. I think we have her not really any B plot going on there. It should feel like we're building to something. And then she turns herself in. I think the entirety of arc 2 should not be from Taylor's perspective. I think it should be all the rooms and stuff we are witnessing, very much like how it's played out. But I think the element of why did she turn herself in, letting the audience kind of suss out from the previous episode and maybe mentioning the demands and stuff a little bit, but I don't think we should be as straightforward. I think there should be a lot of the episode being the wards and the PRT and the undersiders panicking and everybody trying to figure out what's going on. I think that should be the majority of the episode. Is just people in rooms going, why did she do this? Is she trying to fuck us over? What is her reasoning?
Right.
And of course, we can always cut to like the fact that she can hear everybody and she's just sitting quietly in the room, waiting for them to come talk to her. But it's, it's a half an hour of people running around trying to figure out why the hell she's in that room right now. Like, I think having all of those scenes of the fallout of her just turning herself in, just that action alone, not even any conversation she has, would be really interesting to watch after we've seen a whole episode, essentially building to her saying goodbye and leaving us trying to, much like everybody else, trying to figure out what exactly caused that.
Right. Yep. Yeah, no, I like that. I think that works. That works pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, because I think you cut. We've got all the scenes that are already there. You can kick it off with the PRT officers talking. You can, have the wards here and there having conversations. Vista, talking with Tag, blaming him for the flechette thing. You cut back to the Undersiders. Each one of them, how are they reacting? How do they feel about the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Tattletale trying to calm them down, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, I think having all that, cut to Danny being sat down by Tag and then Miss Militia, separately or together to, talk about this. And then ultimately, the back half of the episode is finally getting to Taylor and kind of her giving the list of demands and talking with the lawyer. Like, maybe that's why she's quiet. She's just waiting for the lawyer to show up and then she'll give her list of demands.
Yeah.
The lawyer shows up. She finally says, like, hey, here's what I want. And maybe we take out a few of the things to focus on her essentially being like, the world's going to come to an end and I need to be put in a position to not have that happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could even say Dinah told me to do this or something like that. And that's why then they drag in Dinah and she's like, I don't know what you guys want me to tell you. I told her to do this. Like, this is very cut and dry.
Yeah.
Like, you guys have a better chance with her on the team. And they're like, fuck you. She's like, no, fuck you.
I mean, I do love, you got to keep the bit with Dinah and Tag and all of that is just fantastic.
Also, I'll make the recommendation now. If there's any way that we could, and I this is not just because I dislike Tag, but because I feel like Tag and Pigott are somewhat similar enough. I think we can just keep Pigott in place. Like, she gets ousted and we'll just say Coyle becomes interim director, like while she's under investigation. But then shit goes to shit and she's back in there, since Coyle's dead and Thomas is dead and we don't know anything about that. That like she's now been checked out. She's no longer compromised. She's had people look her over and basically be like, yeah, Regent didn't get to you. You literally have a hand waving scene of, like I've been cleared by, thinkers to do this. Cause she's hard nosed as fuck to get in there and be like, abso-fucking-lutely not, Skitter. I fucking hate you. Kidnapped my ass. Like, we've seen how much of a bulldog she is, how much she hates heroes, or powered people, period. There is so little about this argument. She firebombed maybe people didn't get fast enough part of the city to kill the Slaughterhouse 9 and got shit for it. Why the fuck wouldn't she like threaten children? To kill children, in order to get this done. What about this is not Pigott?
I agree. I think this would be an interesting one to poll for people. I'm curious what the general fan base would say. But I think you're spot on. I don't think it makes sense to bring in a disposable director for such a harrowing moment for Taylor. Because like the truth is like, sure, as readers, we're a bit more attached to Alexandria than maybe some of the others. But if this is translating to screen, Alexandria appears in the Leviathan fight. We see her a little bit from Legend's perspective with some Cauldron interactions and like maybe a flashback line or two. And that's it. So like, while her death is shocking, it's not going to have the emotional impact, I think, that it carries when you read the scene as opposed to when you're watching it. However, if Pigott is there as opposed to Tag, and Pigott is also caught in the crossfire and is killed by Taylor, there's a lot more wrapped up in that than Disposable Director number 3. You know?
Yeah. Because, like, really, though, I talked about this before. Tag is not there for long.
No.
Like, Coil isn't even in power for long. Like, they just get offed so quickly. Like, I feel like if we'd had more exposure to Tag as a family man, or his interactions with the wards, you know, having, you know, somehow showing a bit, you know, more empathetic character, you're getting to know him, we would feel more when killing him. Instead, it's just satisfying because we don't care about him. He is Disposable Director number 3. He comes in, acts like a piece of shit his whole, you know, half an arc that he gets, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
But having Pigott, who we have mixed feelings about, Pigott is like, she is the bulldogish nature of Tag, but we kind of dig it. When it comes to Pigott, I kind of dig it. There we go.
Yeah.
And especially when Viola Davis is playing her. Like, come on.
Right. Exactly. We've already, I mean, our fan cast has already been approved. So.
Also, if we get Tag, it is 100%. In a younger time, it would have been the dad from Heroes.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Oh gosh, what's that? I forget the actor's name, but you're spot on.
He just plays evil dad.
He does
so
evil
well.
Dad so well. Yeah,
like
yeah.
He's very dadly, but very evil, as opposed to evil dad from Alias, who is more evil than he is dadly.
Just trying to think. I'm trying to just think of all the.
It's the bad lawyer
evil
from,
dad ratio
from Legally Blonde, or as I know him, Jesus from Godspell.
I mean, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I like it. Oh man, I'm just trying to cast Broadway actors into Worm. Okay, that's a. We'll save that for our Patreon. Yeah, Patreon exclusives.
That's for Worm the Musical.
Yeah, Worm the Musical. We're gonna cast Broadway stars.
Take that, you worm.
Oh God, that's such a bad joke.
No. Michael, why?
That is what those are for.
We'll get Lin-Manuel on the line. Write us some sick beats. You can do it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what other notes I really had. I don't think we really need the interludes all that much. I think we can.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean the Charlotte interlude. That's just a scene. We're just throwing that in somewhere, depending on how everything else falls in. You know, I like seeing the team kind of regroup without Taylor for a minute. We don't get a lot of scenes without Taylor in the show.
Yeah,
so it's nice to have that, but it's not like it's a scene. You're 5 minutes.
I mean, on top of the other things, I think if we bring, yeah, I'm trying to think of where to put this, because I feel like this is almost the start of the next episode, because there's the talk that she has about whether or not her dad talks about whether or not he should give her permission to join, essentially. She needs a write-off for that. But if she's just kind of making this deal and not going to the wards officially, like, I don't know if we need that. I always like more Danny. But I also feel like this is, along with the Weaver thing, like the announcement, I don't know. Do we stick with them spinning and placing this on Alexandria? We've kind of already have her showing her off in the Echidna fight, both as a personality and as strength wise. So I think that's good. I think you maybe have some sort of moment. I don't know if you just have her be the calm, cool, collected and just have the implicit threat, or if you do something else when she returns to remind you how dangerous she is. I'm leaning towards you just have her essentially, you remember how dangerous she is after the first time she goes out and brings back someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that she does it herself.
Yeah, it's great scene. So maybe just keep that as is. But yeah, like, how do you introduce Taylor's switch over? I guess
from villain to hero.
Do we have it happen that fast? Do we do a Defiant moment? Because like Defiant didn't get a reintroduction of like, oh, I fucked up, but now I'm a new hero. Like, do we just have Taylor cut her hair and the PRT be like, you are Weaver now?
Call me Defiant.
Woof. No. Dragon is Wi-Fiant.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's such a bad joke.
Too much
comedy gold.
Yeah, again, and this is where it always gets kind of tricky, because when you read the story, I really like the way it reads. I like these arcs. I like the flow. I like the way everything is paced. But it's hard to translate that. It's hard to get that across without sounding cheesy, and it kind of does. I think announcing Skitter as a hero would come out of left field for most people, which is kind of ironic, because in the start of the story, that's what she's attempting to do, is become a hero. And she's just doing it her own way. She's finding her own path. She gets wrapped up with people that she finds, camaraderie in, friendship in, and gets, wrapped up in the story. And by the time we get to this point, she has abandoned so much of that desire to be a heroic cape with the Protectorate, right? She's the hero of her own story, but she doesn't have any desire to work with them beyond how they can help serve her interests. And so the shift here, while I do think it works when we're getting Taylor's internal monologue through these arcs, it doesn't feel that much of a leap. You're not going to have that unless we're going full, film noir, Hitchcock, narration over the series.
Not feeling that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the vibe we're going for. It's hard to sell those types of shifts.
Yeah. Also, if we had, because we talked about another reveal delay is delaying Dragon being revealed. Like, we've mentioned how we would reveal it at one point in time, like the idea of the flashback for Dragon being like the guy's family getting killed and everything, going, and then the reveal, of course, is it's the computer, not the family drowning, that's like Dragon.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, we talked about putting that off, having her go like, hey, Colin, there's something I need to tell you. And, we always just dance around it. We have him talk about, her trigger event and, all these other things. But we always just dance around it, saying or revealing that she is a robot. I think this is the time where, like, when Taylor's up on the roof giving the, why the fuck did you do this? And they, and essentially Dragon revealing in a moment of, trying to convince Taylor, trying to show her that, like, we are being vulnerable with you. We are putting ourselves forward into your hands first, so that you will put yourself in ours. They're trying to convince you. Defiant's apologizing for how he handled things, and He sees the same things in Taylor that like that do whatever it takesness to, kind of, we did it the wrong way, but join us now and we'll try and make it right, like I've been trying to do. And then, like, y'all fucked us over. Or Taylor's like, yeah, you fucked me over at the school. Why should I trust you? And Dragon finally, reveals like, hey, there were Defiance being like, hey, there were God, I can never pronounce it. Extenuating. Is it extenuating?
Yeah, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts in my head to think. I feel like there's another word that's so close and it's killing me that it must be extenuating. There's extenuating circumstances here that, he's trying to explain it without saying it. And finally, Dragon just kind of like puts her hand on his shoulder and is like, literally does the mask and then takes off her face as well. And she's like, basically like, I take penalties when I do stuff because it's part of like, I can't go beyond my programming. Like, I'm stuck this way somewhat, and I'm trying to break free of like the systems, just like you're trying to break free of systems, and obviously not something that cheesy, but still the implication of, like, I take penalties for working in the system. I get how frustrating that is. You have no idea how frustrating it is because unlike you, my being is literally tied to following the goddamn rules. And I don't want to because it hurts people like you when I should be helping people like you. And Taylor finally getting like, hey, join the team. It's what you wanted. It's what we want. I realized that Pigott and Alexandria were trying to fuck you over, but we're here now. We are offering this to you. Please take us on this because it's basically this or prison. He's like, if this help stops the end of the world, that's what I'm here for.
Right.
And the next scene, I guess, is Dragon and Defiant. I don't even know if I'd put Chevalier here, but Dragon and Defiant basically being like, thank goodness for Skitter here murdering that traitor.
Right, yeah.
That traitor ass bitch.
Oh, man. Hope nobody else is keeping any secrets.
Yeah. Defiant. Definitely not Arms Master.
Yeah.
Questionable past.
By the way, his Defiant costume is just his Arms Master costume with one of those like fake nose and mustache glasses.
I was gonna say with glasses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what it is, but the Judge Dredd hat.
Yeah. Just pulls a Clark Kent. I'll never know it's me.
Except the glasses are on the outside of the helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe after we read next episode, we'll get a vibe better for how we transition one to the other. That way
with all of these arcs now. It's like, well, let me just keep reading and then we'll come back and revisit this.
Because a lot of this, I remember all of the events. I remember all the characters, but the vibe and the pace of exactly how, paragraph to paragraph, how do they work out scene to scene? That is the part I'm missing. And that does take literally sitting down and reading it to see if it works.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, oh yeah, I remember all the, everything that happens. And then you read it and you're like, ooh, that is what happens, but that does not work.
Right. Well, we'll put a pin in it, revisit it as we do. I mean, the next few arcs all keep the plot moving forward here. There's a lot that happens, so going to be a lot to revisit.
Yeah, I think this would make for one of the better. Man, this is one of those things where I think this season, like I said before, would make for some of the best episodes in the show. especially this one with how tense things are going on in the PRT, and then actually sitting down and negotiating, with if we, switching out for Pigott and the Alexandria and having how, just intense that whole thing is. I think that, and then the episode before just being this, Taylor essentially saying goodbye to everybody. I think this is going to be like two of the best episodes in a TV show. And I think this would probably be rated one of the worst seasons.
Yeah, it's a different type of season, different type of climaxing.
I know all about different types of climaxing in this.
As it left,
very different.
As it left my mouth.
You even paused for us to criticize.
I did, because it was going to come, and it was happening.
It was going to come.
How do I leave the chat? Alexa, play Despacito.
Dragon, play Despacito.
Fun fact, for those who don't know, I did name my computer Dragon after reading Worm for the first time.
Ooh.
My first PC I ever built was Edward IV.
Yeah.
And my Surface is Defiant.
Oh.
Your what is?
My Surface, my tablet.
Oh, nice.
Named it Defiant.
Nice.
Nerds.
My old Fire tablet is Arms Master, and that's why I don't use it anymore.
Can't call us nerds. We're doing a podcast about making a television show out of a niche web serial
about superheroes. What's nerdy about that?
Nothing nerdy. I'm sorry. I'll take it back.
Truthfully, I don't have too much more to say here. I know we like to drag this out a little bit, kind of give some consistency with our episode lengths, but when you're done, you're done. And I think we might just be done. It's hard. Like I said, it's a great arc. There's very little I really want to change. I think the tension, the build up with Alexandria going and getting, quote unquote, getting Undersiders, dragging them back, the build up to everything that happens at the end. It works so well. Like,
yeah,
this arc is going to play very well for television.
Oh, and yeah. And like I said, episode by episode, I think this is going to be a great season.
Yeah.
The season as a whole, I think, is going to be a rough one.
We'll see.
I think one retrospective change, if I could make one retrospective change, it would be how we include the triumvirate in the show. I think
just giving them some more screen time.
Giving them some more screen time.
Probably a good idea.
In small way. Like, it's good because we see them show up, at least two of them, I think, for the Leviathan fight. I don't remember seeing Alexandria there for the first one, but I know the other two are there.
They're all three there. Alexandria.
They're all three there. So like having them show up, having them be face forward for that, I think, they show up enough, but I think having more interactions in the show, not too much more, just enough to show that like they interact with each other, how you develop a feel for them other than they're just the three big heroes, so that like when, because correct me if I'm wrong, it's Eidolon, Legend, and Alexandria, right?
Alexandria, yeah. That's your triumvirate.
Yeah. Just getting a more of a feel for their personalities before we off them or out them or, fight with them. Just having a little bit more. So that when Alexandria does walk in the room, like, we have seen her tangle. And I do think we've seen her tangle enough to develop a vibe for her. But, maybe a little bit more earlier on as well. Literally like an extra scene in season 2 or something like that.
Right, just a little bit. No, I agree with that.
Yeah,
totally. I definitely agree with that.
That's what I would fix, just so that when we come to this moment and she kills Alexandria, we have a tiny bit more feel for Alexandria than we do currently.
Yeah.
That would be it.
No, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, subtle little changes. I think, as written, Taylor doesn't know Alexandria dies until she's woken up afterwards. I think, obviously, for television, I think you have to show Alexandria dying. I think that's very impactful. You don't, in a show like this, you don't hide deaths that are actually deaths because the audience is going to assume they're not dead. That it's another trick or something like that. Yes, worm purists, I know Alexandria isn't technically fully dead here. She's brain dead.
Yeah.
Get it.
Meet me halfway, I think this is actually something changing from the show to the book. I think one of the much like how Flechette can, negate friction, the running through the empty PRT building just glides off my mind every time I read it. It just, I just don't like moving through geography. Is really boring in most books, and the Wild Bow's not an exception to that for me. I just find the whole running through the building it's just boring to me. I think in a show, it would be so much better. Like she wakes up, empty building, she's running through halls. It feels almost like a zombie apocalypse, and she's trying to figure out what happened. And she ends up in, I don't know if she's going to make it all the way down to the morgue, but she ends up somewhere and there's 2 body bags and, there's bugs all over them. And she unzips it and sure enough, it's Pigott and Alexandria. Like, I think you have the chaos of the moment of her, screaming and them getting attacked, and we show them getting attacked and, what's her face choking, but we don't show her die. We just show her choking and trying to fly and choking, and then Pigott getting, bitten to death or whatever. And then she gets knocked out, and then we wake up and she goes down and finds the bodies. And that's when Dragon and Defiant land on the roof, and she's like scrambling to figure out what the hell to do. But I think that it's going to play so much better. One of the few, there's a lot of them that might play, but that's one that sticks in my mind that's going to play a lot better in a show than it did to read.
I do agree with that. I do agree it's going to play a lot better in a show.
Specifically just the waking up in the empty building part.
Yeah,
and running
for 100%. Totally agree. I do think it's important in shows where you're not the show doesn't hide from showing deaths, and Worm certainly wouldn't be an exception to that. If Alexandria is the first time that a character dies, but that death is not shown, nobody's going to believe she's dead. It's going to be a trick. It's another cape. It's whatever the case may be. People are going to justify it for so long until it's just not relevant anymore. But that's not too satisfying. I think you could still maintain everything you're saying. You just heavily emphasize. You have Alexandria. She's covered in bugs. She skyrockets into the air. She's flying away, choking on bugs, and you just see, her eyes roll back and she falls to the ground. And
I think they're going down her throat. She's literally stumbling through the walls, and you cut. But then when you go downstairs and she finds her, like literally the bugs pour out of her throat when Taylor, unzips the bag.
Exactly. You just want to make it crystal clear, because if the whole premise of your show is that characters die and you show characters dying brutally, and then you don't show a character die and you just show their body afterwards, people aren't going to buy that. I mean, like, why didn't we see him die? Like, it's just classic.
Also, this is a great jump. You're right, because if I don't see them die on screen, they aren't dead.
Yeah,
I stand by that in like every show I watch. I'm like, they ain't dead. I didn't see a body, and even then, if I didn't see them get killed, I also question whether that's the body or if they're pretending to be dead.
And in a superhero show with thinkers and and masters. And
who's
all
to
this
say
kind of
she
stuff.
didn't wake up in some giant, like, somebody's, dream and, incepting
exactly.
her or something. Makes sense for how weird the world is.
Yeah.
No, this is a great jumping off point to talk about in a show that's dying. This is going to come out way later, but talking about the gruesomeness of Worm in book versus show format. So there is, I think about this with what was Invincible.
Insert Invincible spoilers here.
So Invincible, one of the things that they had to do when transferring from comic book to the show was they had to up the intensity of the gore and stuff, because it's shocking when, spoilers, Omni-Man kills everybody. And
insert Invincible spoilers here. Michael,
kills everybody the first time and then kills everybody with his son the second time. Those are shocking in the comics. Those are doubled up in gore and because the moment is supposed to be shocking. In a comic book medium, it comes across as shocking because you're flipping the page and this thing is happening, and you have a visceral reaction to it because it's a still image on a page. There's only so much you can do. For a show to elicit that reaction, you are having it moving and people are splattering and stuff is happening. And it's that visceral reaction again, but you could watch it having read the comic and get to that part and still have a new visceral reaction to that because it's more gory. Both in just moving format, and they did just up the violence.
Right.
For Worm, all of these moments that happen that are violent and gory, that I think of, like Brian and the meat locker scene.
Oh, yeah.
Are going to be twice as rough to watch than to read on paper.
Yep.
When you see, it's the slow pan towards, into the darkness of the corner of the locker, past all the veins, which are nerves running along the walls and the ceiling and floor. That is an image that is going to haunt viewers.
It's terrifying.
And it's going to be worse because it's you've seen it now before you've imagined it, and it's nebulous in your head, and you have a sort of like I said, we've said, it's a vibe. It's ambiguous in your head. You've developed an image, but it's not substantial enough to stick there in the same way literally seeing the image of Brian hanging on meat hooks is going to.
Right.
And I was thinking about that in, our comments from Wolf Tamer 9, like way back in, I don't know, arc 17, I guess, talking about sanding the edges.
Shout out Wolf Tamer.
Yes, shout out Wolf Tamer. The edges that we are sanding are not going to matter a single bit when it comes to how much more violent the show will look when your eyes are on it. How you'll hear it. Like reading something on paper can be terrifying and leave an impression on you. But there is something to seeing some of these deaths and some of the things that the Slaughterhouse 9 does that are just going to be so much worse to look at. You could tone so much down with the Slaughterhouse 9 and they would still be worse. Seeing anything that Bonesaw does, any of Bonesaw's creations, is going to be a worse image in my head once I've seen it on a screen as compared to reading it. Like
when she's same scene with the Brian in the ice locker, but the fact that she has all of Perion's family with plastic surgery faces of the 9 just like bolting out of the complex there, horrifying. That's just nightmare material.
Victoria getting acided after she gets splashed and then her force field broken.
Yep.
Like you're like, ooh, that when I read that, I was like, ooh, that is horrifying because I know that that's an incredibly painful thing, but I don't have really an image associated with that. I just know, oh, that really fucking sucks.
Yeah.
When we see that and, she is instantly two-faced from The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
But for like her body,
Yep.
That's going to stick with me a longer time. For sure. I'm going to see her get spiked like a volleyball and the acid everywhere. And I'm going to not want to eat while I watch that episode.
There's one of my favorite quick, brutal scenes or deaths in Worm is during Leviathan, Arc 8. Leviathan grabs Shielder, I believe it is, by the legs and bisects him against the corner of a building. Just takes him off, torso up, and right in front of the rest of the family there.
Yep.
And it's quick and it's just brutal. Like, Worm is full of those types of moments that are just going to absolutely devastate viewers in the best way.
And we talked about, like, you can't the shock value that some things provide in Worm, or the like, they're just so slight. I mean, we always go back to the pedophilia of Coyle, where like he gives off, very pedophile vibes. Yeah. But like, what does that do if we get rid of that? And that's not lessening the overall darkness of the show. Shielder getting bashed against the side of the building is going to be worse. Like, the things we're removing just kind of don't
plenty of
add
visceral. Yeah.
There's plenty of visceral stuff. There's plenty of tension that's going to be in the room just from two people talking to each other that isn't going to, you're not going to feel that as much in the book as you will in a show where they have, we have done the editing and the sound to go with it. And it's going to, all of this, if it's done good, done well, obviously.
Yeah. Best case scenario.
Yeah, you could really botch this too. So it's,
That's why I'm glad we're just a friendly little podcast and no stakes at all. We can say whatever we want. We don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. But I was just thinking about that. I'm like, no, like visually, this is going to be darker than the book.
Yeah, no, in many ways it will. I mean, I think you nailed it. Getting in music cues and audio and all of that kind of stuff, everything that comes together. There's a reason. I mean, not to say books aren't popular. The books have grown in popularity over the years, but there's a reason that the stories that stick with so many people are visual stories. Most people are engaged visually with stories easier than they do when they read them. And I think we talked about this from the beginning. I think that's one area where Worm can really shine, can sell the visceral nature of the story.
Worm isn't, people don't get into Worm because of how dark Worm is.
Yeah.
They get into Worm because of, I'm not going to say realistic, but the picture it paints being a grim reality, but not a grim dark fantasy. Like, this is not The Boys, which is just honestly shock value most of the time. In the show, for sure, it's shock value for just, we need to keep upping the gore because we need to outdo ourselves last time. And the book, which is just like, it's just being irreverent most of the time, is like, oh, what if Professor X was a pedophile the whole time? Like, okay, like, all right, like, it's not.
And this dude's point of power is a huge dick.
Yeah. one of my probably my favorite character from the comic.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, like they're not. Those are dark for the sake of being dark and irreverent. And when we get to Invincible is that again. Invincible is one that I would account more to Wolf Tamer 9's comment from Arc 17, which is like it wants to have those moments where somebody does something extra evil, just to subvert the trope it's playing on, to make it worse. It is the Justice League Unlimited M-rated.
Right.
It's we're gonna deal with this guy. Oh my gosh, he's running around, he's robbing banks with a laser gun, and they stun people. And in Invincible, you would just have it explodes people. Like all it's doing is upping the dial up for the sake of upping it. Like there's no. It's not that it's more realistic. It's just upping it for the sake of getting the M rating, which nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
And I enjoy both shows, but I'll say at the same time, I like Justice League too, and Justice League can be dark. It can be really dark, and yet doesn't have any of the need any of the extra evil villain stuff going on. Like, nobody really dies in Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. There are some, granted, there are some deaths, but not really. It's a kind of it's a kids show, like, and yet it's a really dark kids show. So, like, you could really just lean in with that and just put the dial somewhere between Invincible and Justice League. It's dark because it just is what it is. It doesn't need to be worse just because that's what's going to make it darker.
I think people like Worm because it is a nice contrast to the genre, or rather to a popular section of the genre. I've heard it said that the reason Star Wars and Star Trek exist so well against one another is because Star Trek presents the utopia of science fiction, and Star Wars is the dystopia of science fiction. And they really play off of being those like two sides of the same coin. And I think in a lot of ways, like your traditional comic books, your MCU, all of these kind of more traditional comic stories are your utopia of comics and superheroes. And Worm really is that dystopia of superheroes.
I like superhero dystopia.
Yeah.
That is a very good way to put that.
And it just plays against and with the rest of the genre so well that it scratches an itch that everybody has but didn't know they needed scratched, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think like we said in the beginning, I think it's ripe for a television adaptation for that exact reason. I think nothing really sits in the television or film space for superheroes that Worm would fill. The closest I would put would be Watchmen, but Watchmen isn't really superheroes, right? It's vigilantes. It's a little different.
Yeah.
Nothing really does what Worm would do, and I think it would do very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end of this rant that I've been going on, you could remove all of the edginess from Worm, and Worm would still be Worm.
Yeah.
Like, I think you could remove all the edginess, the angsty internetiness from it, which, granted, I think is why a lot of people like it. But you could remove all of that, and the quality of Worm would change not a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
What's that meme? Worm. Worm at 100% strength. Let's remove all the terminally online edginess. Worm at
99% or whatever
strength.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, thanks for joining us as we reviewed Arc 22 of Worm. And
hey, I got us to that hour, didn't I?
You did. You promised it.
It was all good.
I got you an episode. You asked for content.
We delivered. You're welcome, America.
God bless America.
No, but truly, it's
and the rest of you. And the rest of you.
And the rest of you.
Mostly
Canada.
America.
Hey, we got listeners from all across the
all over Brockton Bay and the heroes of the PRT.
We got fans across the globe. So God bless the globe, I guess. We'll go with that.
May Sion look on us all. Amen.
We are going to be diving into Arc 23 next week, Brockton Bay Book Club, and followed by Dissecting Worm, as has been our schedule and will continue to be our schedule. We are so close to the end of the series.
Can you believe it? That's what I was going to say.
7, not including the epilogue, 7 more arcs. So, 14 weeks, assuming we keep our every other week? Man, we're wrapping this up.
Cannot, and I mean this in the best way, cannot come fast enough.
What do you mean?
So I want to get the Lord.
We're getting there. Thanks so much for listening. I'm going to go ahead and close this out here. It's been a pleasure. We absolutely love talking about this stuff, as you can tell. We're going to keep talking about it. We love reading your comments, your insights, what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you would change, what you wouldn't. Keep them coming. Really enjoy reading everybody's critiques and praises. And for all of our Patreon, special shout out to you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Be on the lookout for some more bonus content coming to Patreon. And if bonus content sounds like something you'd enjoy and you are not part of our Patreon, consider popping on over. We got some fun little extracurricular Worm activities with more planned.
Oh boy, do we.
So, on that note, I think we will go ahead and end it here. Michael, thanks for making us sound so good and using that soundboard of yours to perfection. You scare me every time. Allan, thanks for joining me. Been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, my name's Jacob, but that's close enough.
Yeah, I stopped halfway through.
Wait, did you say what?
I said thank you, Mike.
You're also welcome.
There's only 2 of us here.
There's 3. There's 3 of us.
I was not including yourself.
You expect me to keep all 3 of these names in when I'm trying to keep all of Worm's names in my head?
This is
right
just
now.
going to fade out in the background.
Take that, you worms. Just fade it out.
Thank you so much for listening. Read along with us at parahumans.wordpress.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you love? What did you hate? Anything you think we missed, etc., as long as it's kind. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find us on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit at Brocktonbaybc, or click the link in the description.